140?
Yep.
Okay. Uh-oh. I took the plate out.
Oh, the power plate?
Yeah.
Interesting how the strap fits.
Like
above
loose.
the shell.
That's like part of, that's a lot of me.
You like it just having more?
No, just my leg is big.
Oh.
So I don't get to close it all that much.
Right.
Like if Jeff did it, it would be fine. A lot of cranking.
Yeah. But it doesn't seem like that's excessively longer than a buckle bolt. Doesn't like getting like strapping on. Nice. That's a nice fit you got there.
Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
And I'm Bob. How's it going?
Bob and I are here today to talk about the K2 Cortex 140 Zonal BOA.
Again.
That was the correct title, right?
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, about a month ago, I think we were just talking about it and we couldn't exactly remember. We talked with Tom from K2, who was instrumental in this boot's development. And we had skied it then, but not very much. So we were kind of waiting to do more of a full review. And at this point, we've both skied in it quite a bit. You've probably skied in it twice as much as me.
I kind of had a hard time not picking this.
Yeah,
in
that's
the
what it
morning
seemed like,
sometimes.
especially towards the latter part of the season.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you had a lot of boots that you had a lot of success with, you know, over the past couple of years, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, this was tough competition with the orange boot, the Mach 1 130 from Technica.
Yep.
With the zip fit. That's an unbelievable combo.
Yep.
There's a reason I reached for these and be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, and seeing you in your Kesley K130P less and less these days.
I mean, really not at all since Orange and Cortex entered the chat.
And this boot, I think, accomplishes some similar things, would you say?
It is far more similar to the Kesley than it is the Technica.
Yeah. So that's a fun piece of information
Sure
to start with.
Yeah.
So this is it. This is the boot, K2 Cortex 140 Zonal BOA. We talked about a lot of this stuff when we talked to Tom, but I still think it's important to kind of go through it because there's a lot going on here. And Bob, I'm going to task you with taking us through all the technology and features here. And then once we're done with that, we can talk a little bit about fit and maybe the successes and struggles that we've both had. And then we can talk a lot about performance.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you notice when you pick this thing up is that this is a legit piece of plastic. That is the overarching theme in terms of the construction of this boot, is that it's thick TPU material. So polyurethane, thermomoldable, but it's very, very thick.
Yeah,
and
super thick.
One of the interesting things that Tom revealed, and this boot comes in a 130 as well, that the biggest difference between the 140 and the 130 is the thickness of the lower shell. So the upper cuff is very similar, but the thickness of the lug is quite a bit different on the 140, and you certainly feel that on snow. But yeah, we got that polyurethane shell and then a softer TPU material in the instep, which is another instrumental piece of this boot. When we get into kind of the convenience and ease of use, I simply cannot imagine this boot functioning without softer plastic over the instep.
I couldn't get it on my foot.
I mean, it's just, can you imagine if this white, thick plastic continued on?
No.
I mean, that's the key right there.
I can't imagine that at all.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, it works really well.
Yeah.
It's one of the better kind of like softer plastic, easy fit systems
Right.
that I've experienced. Because most boots have something similar now.
Yeah.
And some of them I struggle with, and some of them feel like very asymmetrical too. So you're like putting your foot in at an angle sort of to like push one side out more. This just feels very natural and intuitive to me.
Yeah, I must have, my ankles must like to bend like that to get in, because I like this asymmetrical entry.
Interesting.
Entry point. So, but that's kind of the heart of the boot, is this thick TPU material. We also get 2 energy bolts in the back, which Tom revealed to Jeff. He was removing the wrong bolt all along.
Yeah, I swapped that.
Yeah, if you want to make it a little bit softer, you take out the top rivet.
Yep.
And apparently you can take them both out too if you really want to get crazy with it.
I don't know that would do anything though.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it still is connected
Yeah.
with these 2 rivets on the side, which
I wouldn't recommend taking both of them out.
I get a different boot at that point, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, and then there's the 2 rivets on the side that do upper cuff adjustment. Tech toe fittings, which is interesting. I don't know who exactly is going uphill on this boot, but if you want to, and you have some type of hybrid binding that will allow you to click into a tech toe and go uphill, then
Yeah. I
go
feel
right
like
for it.
we get questions about that a good amount, and a lot of them just stem from this boot.
Yeah.
But there are like other things out there, and then you also see people like take Alpine boots and retrofit them
Yeah.
with tech fittings. And yeah, like I think you replied to a comment on YouTube and gave a really good answer that don't think about it as like people going out and doing huge vertical gain for their touring.
Yeah.
It's more like little side country missions.
Yeah.
Where you just, you go you click into your pins for a second, kind of like side hill, traverse, climb
Yeah.
up something, and then ski down.
Right.
That's kind of how I think about it.
Like a cast system, I
Correct.
think is the ideal usage here.
That I would say that is pretty spot on and
Yeah.
ideal. Yeah.
Sticking with the plastic, really interesting what they do in the top. A lot of boots have kind of dissected upper cuff, top and bottom. You know, I think you'd see this more on a 4-buckle boot, but this is a solid plastic plate up here.
Well, and it's like I think we talked about this a little bit with Tom, like the Speed Machine dual dial or double BOA that I've been skiing with, it isn't fully connected. It's just like bridged at
Right.
the end. So it's going to be really interesting just like seeing how different boot manufacturers approach this upper cuff section when using BOA.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like there's some differing opinions.
Yeah, and it's hardly even year 1 with an upper BOA, so there's
Yeah, I
a
don't
lot of
right.
room for
It's not really year one.
improvisation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the actual shell. There's a lot of add-ons here, and we can, and I think I'll talk about the double BOA first, because
yeah.
it is interesting and certainly one of the big parts of this boot, and also makes it very rare and unique. There aren't other low volume boots of this flex, or really any flex, that have 2 BOAs at this point. And the upper BOA really functions more as a performance upgrade, as opposed to the lower one, which is a little bit more in the comfort realm.
Yeah.
And so through testing, K2 discovered that the athletes that use these boots and those for whom it's designed preferred the upper BOA to 2 buckles. So they did do both in the construction and development of this boot, and found out that people like the upper BOA in terms of performance, and just felt like it gave a more progressive feel and just a snugger overall kind of wrapping of the lower leg. And they found that translated to better performance.
It's pretty cool. and there's been like a lot of discussion about it, and like some varying opinions, and people saying that it doesn't work, but like it totally does like self-adjust, and to me it does that 100% in a positive way.
Yeah.
I know that there are people out there that are still skeptical, but like you can even see it when you're like, when you don't have your foot in it. Like right now, like these two are tightening and these aren't, because that's where the least resistance is. And that same thing happens like as you're skiing and flexing, it like kind of shifts around. So I think it's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a minute to warm up to that thought because I didn't feel it in the first boot that I tried.
Yeah.
The upper BOA, but I do feel it in this.
Yeah. Just consistent.
Yeah, I wanted to adjust the lower more than the upper.
Yeah.
And kind of with this boot, it feels a lot more direct.
Well, it's hard to get out of a lifetime of doing that.
Totally.
Like,
yeah,
it's like counterintuitive when
Yeah.
all of a sudden you don't have to do that.
Before I take the liner out, just wanted to point out some other things built into the shell. One, actually, I might just have to take the liner out for this. One is they have extra plastic built into the rear. This boot has a 2.5 degree ramp angle and a 15 degree forward lean. I'm actually unsure if that is with this plastic piece in the back or not. It is removable to give you a more upright stance. And then you can put that kind of built-in spoiler back in if you wish. It's a little bit higher than the shell. So there's actually a lot of customization here.
Yeah.
And then the liners come with a spoiler as well. So I pretty much have both in, as well as a little bit of a heel lift in on the boot board. And that just helps me get a little bit more forward in the boot. I have very stiff ankles, so having this
Look at all that stuff you got in there.
I know. It's great. And that actually goes on top of a floppy boot board.
Yeah, love it.
Which is kind of counterintuitive to like the really burly overall nature of the boot. But
yeah, but it's cool when you think about its intention.
yeah, and I think it works.
It's not about like, it's not just about ripping carving turns. It's about dropping 100-foot cliffs with 80-foot gaps like Sam Cooch.
Do you think landing that big, you're all of a sudden like, ooh, good thing my boot board's a little bit soft.
It's got to help a little bit. Yeah, and if you don't know what we're talking about, go watch Natural Selection, because it is insane. And we'll definitely talk about some of that stuff when we get to performance.
Yeah. So built-in spoiler in the back, optional spoiler here, and then they have a power plate in the front here. I actually had to take this out when I first started skiing in the boot because I had a hard time getting the boot on with this much plastic in the front. I've since put it back in just more for experimental sake. And I couldn't quite tell the difference in performance because it's so stiff as is.
Yeah.
It's not like adding that back in really made that much of a difference.
Yeah, so I did it like
the other way.
I did it the opposite. I skied in it to start with it in there.
Yeah.
And then ultimately took it out. Or maybe I took it out first time I skied in it and then put it back in. I think I did. And then I took it back out, and that's kind of where I've landed, and I'm pretty happy there. I am interested next season to play around with taking this out, and I can talk more about that when we get to fit.
Yeah, my fear is that if you start taking too much stuff out, that the throat of the boot gets too big.
Yeah.
And then you might be kind of banging around in there because
I tend to not mind that in a weird way.
I've just
as
found
if, like,
that
the very top of the cuff has a tiny bit of not like looseness, but like that's something that I feel in the Speed Machine with the Zip Fit, is like the top is like quite supple.
Yeah.
Which like lets me do weird park skier things.
I found that because the plastic is so stiff, it's hard to get it. It's hard to get it to the point
tight.
Where. So if you take out more material,
it's going to be harder and harder to get.
Yeah,
it
you just
tight.
got to keep cranking more.
Yeah.
So that's my only hesitation there, but it is really fun to play around with for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much the shell. The boot does come with both Alpine and Grip Walk soles.
I was just noticing that you didn't swap to your Alpine soles. You kept your Grip Walk on.
Yeah, I'm Grip Walk.
I have too many old pivots.
Yeah.
So I thought this boot let me ski all my old skis with old pivots. So I quickly swapped to Alpine soles, and you can boot ski.
Yeah.
These are my boot skiing boots.
I'll give you that. I do miss it. K2 uses an Elite Fit Pro liner, and there's actually not a whole lot going on here. This is a pretty minimal, floppy race style liner. Jeff has his laced up. I've left my laces off. Most of the foam, or pretty much all the foam, is found right in the ankle pocket.
Yep.
I would highly recommend molding these as it comes. The ankle and heel area of this Cortex 140 is extraordinarily tight.
Yeah.
So heating and molding the liner is highly advisable prior to skiing, unless you really know that you want your foot clamped in there. I mean, it's
I couldn't really. I suppose now is a good time to transition to fit. You want to talk about fit?
Yeah.
So they're very tight.
Yep.
And yeah, at first, like, I tried to ski them, I think, right off the bat with zip fit liners, and that, like, was very tight. And I do think it'll work, but I'm going to need to, like, remold the zip fit liners. Right. And then I tried to ski in it with this, without molding this, and the, like the bite on your Achilles, or, like, the top of your heel was crazy, to the point where, like, when I was done skiing, and it must have been a really cold day, I, like, literally couldn't get them off in the parking lot. Like, there was, like, 5 to 10 minutes of, like, panic of just, like, I don't know, I literally don't know what to do. I've been skiing my whole life, and I feel like an idiot right now because I physically can't get my boots off. So molding the liner for me was huge. And then even, I will say that, like, they're still tight.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I've skied them more in the past few weeks than I did earlier in the season. When I started to ski in them more often, the first day, and really, like, the first couple runs of the first day, I was pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Kind of just like that fidgety, like, my feet, like, it's, like, doesn't really hurt, but they just feel, like, kind of cramped. Now they're quite comfortable. They're very tight, but like, I could be in them all day, which I know is something that K2 is going for, and that they're boasting about these boots, is that you can ski in them all day. So I don't know. They're like, they're kind of intimidating at first, but I've found a little bit of forgiveness.
I don't think that there are many people that are going to be in a proper shell fit, like,
yeah, sure,
as you would get in a boot shop, and ski in this without modification of one type or another, whether it's molding the liner or heat molding the shell. I had to do both.
I can see that bump on your...
Yeah, I mean, I just have a wide forefoot and bunion area, so I have to bump out from there.
Yeah.
I did that on both boots, and that wasn't even enough. And, like, grinding boots is kind of gone a little bit by the wayside with the advent of more heat moldable shells.
Yeah.
So you don't, like, boot shops aren't grinding boots like they used to.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to stretch these plastics.
You could on these because the plastic's so thick.
So I did.
Oh, okay.
I was like, this isn't enough. I don't feel like heating it again.
Yeah.
I'm just going in there with the grinder and going to town. So I took a ton of plastic out, basically from mid-foot forward through the toes. And it worked really well. You can this is a 96 millimeter last in the 26.5, so really, really narrow. And by taking out that plastic and stretching it out, I'm pretty happy. I didn't adjust the instep at all, and I have a pretty high instep, and I do suffer from a little bit of sensitivity, and that's why I'm always messing with the BOAs at the top of the lift and whatnot, but it's for a low volume boot like this.
It's pretty forgiving.
It's pretty forgiving. It's not as low as I've dealt with in a Lang, like an RS 130.
Yeah.
Which is really is very clamped due to shell and liner. But this combo is actually not terribly crushing, but it is tight.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, they end up fitting really, really well.
I still want more toe room.
Yeah,
zip fit spoiled thing.
yeah. I mean, this is like, I don't know if this is leather or not, but it's stiff.
Yeah,
This material's stiff and doesn't allow for a whole lot of foot spreading out.
yeah. I would like a little bit more foot spreading out right in the end of the forefoot.
Yeah, and
That's better.
you can adjust this tongue as well. I had an incident where I was trying to get my boot kind of
Yeah, and
snugged
you
up.
ripped your tongue out.
Yeah, and I just ripped my tongue
I
out
remember that. That was a funny day.
at the top of the mountain, and you and Matt had skied away, and I basically had to like just put it on like that and ski down with my boot like that, and I actually skied surprisingly well without a tongue. But yeah, I mean, you can adjust this
Yeah.
to your instep.
Give a little bit more room.
It was interesting talking to Tom too, because he really focused a lot on the development of the shell.
Yeah.
And was kind of he was pretty forward about the fact that the liner was a good first start, but that this probably isn't their finished product in Cortex boots. That their focus really for this first year was developing the shell.
Bob, you didn't talk about ski edge sensitivity.
Back to my 1992 Technica TCSs, which featured this technology, Jeff. These insertable plastic pieces. You didn't bring yours in, did you?
No, I didn't. And I don't have any. I didn't ski with any of them in.
Yeah, me either.
You can put little plastic pieces on the side to either give you like quicker edge engagement or less quick edge engagement, I suppose.
Yeah, or just put them both in and snug up the top a little bit.
Yeah, that could work too, for sure.
There's all sorts of additives. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty cool. There's lots of ways to customize this boot right out of the box, and that's part of the fun.
Last thing I want to talk about before we get to performance, I feel like we've already been talking for a long time, and this is going to be a long video. This has a 15-degree forward lean with a 2.5-degree ramp angle. So it's kind of flat down here, but with a lot of forward lean. The speed machine that I ski in, most of the time, or at least most of the time this season, do you remember? It's a 13-degree forward lean with 4.5-degree ramp angle. So if you kind of do the math, and if you like geometry and that kind of stuff, this is putting me in a position with a lot more ankle flexion. So your foot is flatter than I'm used to, but your tibias or your leg is more pushed forward.
Yeah.
So that has been and I feel like it's kind of more of a fit thing. It definitely affects performance too, but that for me has been a little interesting. And I think I talked about this in our Top 5 Fridays video. I'm kind of committed to figuring out how good this boot can be for me, because the 2.5-degree ramp angle comes from a place of freeride skiing, and to me maybe park skiing. I don't think much park performance is going into the design of this boot, because K2 has all their flex boots, which continue to be the most popular park boots. So I don't know that that's really important to many people, but it's intriguing to me. But that difference in ramp angle and forward lean, I couldn't quite put a finger on what it was at first, and then it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, that's considerably different.
Yeah.
When you start doing the math. So the net here is 12.5, and then the net with a speed machine is 8.5, that's 4 degrees of difference, which is not nothing.
No, if they're measuring in degrees, then they all count.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you're talking about stance, and stance is something that affects both fit and performance.
Totally.
And you and I have vastly different preferences here.
Yeah.
I'm putting more ramp in with my heel lift.
Yeah.
And I just like to be more like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it honestly would probably be smart for me to put a heel lift in there.
Yeah.
And see if reducing the net would feel and it's not necessarily that it's better or worse. It's just it's not something that I'm used to feeling. So that's it.
You would be very forward with your flexible ankles, but the stiffness of the plastic
it holds
is
you
gonna hold
up.
Back.
This puts me in a position with more ankle flexion, but it never feels like I'm just falling forward because there's so much supportiveness in the boot itself.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. Do you want to talk about performance?
I guess.
Do you want to start?
Sure. As you'd guess, I would think, or I would hope, that a heavy, stiff boot like this is going to perform really well on piste and in carving turns.
Yeah, rips.
You don't feel anything. It's like we talk about the dampness of skis using metal to dampen vibrations.
Yeah.
And you kind of forget that a boot is part of the vibration damping system.
Yeah.
Whereas this Cortex will make most skis feel a lot damper than they are. And then on the top end, they'll make something like a Vocal Mantra M7 or an 88 or something like that.
I mean, I felt it on like that Revolt 101 even.
Right.
Stiff ski.
Yeah, that just really takes it to the next level.
Yeah.
So there's a huge market improvement here with the thickness of the plastic and on-piste carving turns.
Yeah.
This isn't designed to be a race boot. K2 doesn't have a race department to base their boots off of. So given that, this is about as close to a race boot as I have. Even compared to a Lang RS-130 or the Kesley K130P, that do have a race heritage.
Yeah.
This thing carves extraordinarily stable and incredibly well on piste.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just instant direct energy transfer and total confidence throughout the carve.
I always
Keep
feel
pushing.
like it feels like, and I think part of this is the weight of the boot itself, and part of it is that vibration damping. I always feel like I'm like glued to the snow.
Yeah.
In this boot, and like if you're hitting like, if you're going off a jump and getting in the air, obviously you're no longer glued to the snow, but just like the confidence and the connection to the snow is off the charts in this boot.
Yeah, and it's interesting skiing the same ski, like a QST 100, that we've put a lot of time on, and I've skied in both, this and the orange boot. The difference, and like you said, glued to the snow, I feel like in the Cortex, it definitely wants to stay engaged, whereas the orange boot, the Mach, is going to
snap out of it.
And highlight the ski's energy, whereas this boot's going to highlight the ski's damping properties.
Yeah, totally. So, rips carving turns.
Yep.
You like making a lot of shorter turns often. How do you feel about that?
If you have to do it, you can, but it's not something that this boot excels in.
Yeah.
Certainly the quickness of the Mach 1 stands out here. But again, because the energy transfer is so seamless, it's not terrible. But when you do pair this with a heavier ski,
then it starts getting clunky.
It makes it a little difficult.
Yeah.
So you do have to be ready for that. I mean, you watch, the natural selections skiers on this boot, and they're not making very quick or short turns.
Well, that's what and we can talk about like off-piste stuff too really soon here, but that's what I was just thinking is like everything that you do in this boot should be done through speed and power.
Yeah.
Not
a lot of low speed compliance.
No, or it's just like, you decide what's happening. Like you're just pushing through things, or just like pointing your skis down the fall line and just saying, nope, like that I'm skiing straight through that. Like that, when you start to ski with that mindset and that mentality, the boot loves it. It doesn't particularly love the quickness stuff.
Yeah, that's when you feel, if you're trying to make short swing turns along the side of the trail and really jam into your edges, and that's where you feel the back of this boot.
It pushes.
It just kicks you.
Yeah.
And you need to have a really strong background.
Yeah.
Like a race background or something like that to take full advantage.
I also found, like, similarly, there's so much power transfer, like, for me, that feels direct to the inside edge of both skis, which, that's where you want a lot of grip.
Yeah.
There's so much precision and power transfer that I found that it made skis like feel less slarvy. Like it like constantly wanted to like hook up and go, which is great and like an accomplishment of the boot. But if you want to be loose and slarvy, you might get in this and be like, well, that doesn't want to be loose and slarvy.
No, and I remember kind of my first time in a properly fitting stiffer 4-buckle boot, and all of a sudden realizing that my skis had edges.
Yeah, no, like that's exactly
that's a similar
exactly what
feeling.
I mean. Yeah,
It's like, oh, these are sharp.
You're like, oh, I have to try.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have to ski. I can't just kind of like dilly-dally my way down the slope and like let the skis do the work. Off-Piste Performance to me follows a similar theme and similar conversation. I think, thinking to Max Hitzig, Freeride World Tour champion, Sam Cooch just got second at the natural selection and arguably was like, if you want to talk about the whole competition, I would say arguably he was like MVP of the whole thing. He just skied beautifully the whole time. Like watching skiers like that on this boot, that's what it's really good at. And obviously, like, nor Bob nor myself are doing anything that comes even remotely close to that stuff.
In my mind, it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, totally. And like that, that's an important thing. I'm glad you brought that up because, like, I found that on like soft spring days or like choppy powder days or anything like that, again, like they just wanted to kind of go straight and fast.
Yeah.
And I like skiing that way. The older I get, the less I feel inspired to ski that way. And these boots, I felt really confident and comfortable just kind of like just sending it through whatever.
Yeah, I'll pick up on your spring point there because we started skiing these kind of towards the tail end of the year and through. And so ski test day 1, I was on the Mach 1 130 with the Zip Fit liner.
Yep.
And these are big days. These are not common ski days for us. And by the end of the day, I could definitely feel my heel moving and had a little bit of irritation on my heel. And then I took these out day 2, similar day, probably 50 degrees, wet snow, probably warmer. And by the end of the day, after 15 runs or so, my ankle was in the exact same spot. My ankle and heel were in the exact same spot as they were run 1.
Yeah.
So phenomenal hold and there was no movement because the plastic's so stiff and it holds you back. And these things just plow through spring snow.
Yeah.
No problem. Like it's not even there.
Yeah. But similarly, it's not like they can't do it, but if you're skiing slower or trying to like ski through some like challenging moguls or stuff like that, you have to be really good at skiing.
Yeah.
I think like that's kind of the thing with this boot is like this is a true like expert level boot, even to the point where sometimes when I'm skiing it, I'm like, I don't know that I personally need this.
Right.
I certainly appreciate what it can do, but am I hitting that performance level all the time? And we haven't skied in it yet, but I would venture a pretty confident guess that the 130 is not going to feel like that. I think like a lot of people will be able to ski the Cortex 130 and it's going to feel like a high performance, a really, really nice high performance boot. I do think like I've been skiing in 130 flex boots for at least 10 years now, like 4-buckle 130 flex boots, and this is more.
It's the lug. It's this lower shell that really does the heavy lifting in terms of the stiffness. A lot of people think about it like, oh, I'm flexing into the boot. And like, yeah, you can flex this boot.
Yeah.
But the bigger part is when you put a movement into your foot, it gets directly transmitted to the snow because the plastic is so thick and reactive.
Well, and when you like look down it, I think we talked about this with Tom, like it comes up pretty high.
Yeah.
And you can just tell that like that's a robust lug.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of power coming from that thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, not everybody needs a 140 flex freeride boot. Like it's not like you're gonna see everybody in the lift line at your local resort in a K2 Cortex 140. At least I hope not, because like that might not be the best decision for some people. But it's really cool to have a product like this. And then when you see it kind of in its natural habitat in an event like natural selection, it's like, well, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
it
really
makes
cool
sense.
that like a company is making a product that can support that, because there's not much else out there that is like truly designed for stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, the performance is crazy. There are some
Truly crazy. Yeah.
there are some interesting things with how it fits and the BOA that I'm not crazy about.
Dialing.
The dialing. I mean, like I said, I lose a little bit of circulation just because they're very tight and low volume. And yeah, I have to kind of retool every couple of runs and pop the knobs out and kind of unloosen the power strap here and
Yeah.
let my feet go, and then I gotta.
Would you say that's the biggest downside of BOA or especially dual BOA is the increased time spent adjusting?
In my experience, that's been the case.
That's
I know
probably
that like
mine
you don't
too.
have to constantly, and also like I feel like I have to go back and forth. I gotta tighten the lower.
I do it
gotta
more
tighten
in
the upper.
these than I do in the Speed Machine with the zip fit.
Yeah.
I'm not fully sure why, but
But yeah, that's, do I think this boot would be better as a 4-buckle? I don't know.
I don't.
I mean, I do think there's something to that upper BOA contributing to a smoother performance
Yeah.
and more direct connection. But the convenience for me isn't quite there, especially with the orange boot and the zip fit, how I'm on the first buckle and I'm just, that's
Done,
it,
yeah.
done. I don't touch it for the day.
Yeah.
This is kind of constant, and it's kind of up to the skier to determine if that is worth the performance upgrade or if you're cool
Yeah.
the other way.
Yeah.
And that's
I think that's a good way to think
that's the
about
biggest
it.
way.
Is
That's the
if
biggest thing.
you're not willing to be inconvenienced at all, then double BOA might not be for you.
yeah,
But if you're willing to accept a minor inconvenience or a minor increase in getting ready and getting your boots tightened, I do think there's a performance benefit.
yeah, and you just like with this boot, you don't really have to, you don't have to crank it down.
No.
Because the plastic is so supportive.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting combination.
Yeah, so it's a really good boot. It strikes a crazy high performance level. I think it's going to satisfy some of the best skiers in the world.
And
But,
there's nothing
you
there's nothing else out there like it in the market at this
With
point.
a 2.5 degree ramp angle and a 140 flex and like,
2 BOAs,
yeah.
a tech fitting in the toe,
yeah,
a race-like liner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty rare
totally unique.
product.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else you want to talk about, Bob?
We could talk all day about boots. How much time you got?
I don't know. It's
We can let them decide and ask individual
that's
questions.
what I
but
think we should do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot to talk about here, so just let us know if you have any questions. Because yeah, like Bob said, I feel like we could sit here and talk about these things the rest of the day, and then it would take 24 hours to edit the video, and I'd probably give up, and you'd never see it. So, so yeah, seriously, let us know if you have any questions. I mentioned this in Top 5 Fridays, but I'm excited to ski in them more next year, and I know I mentioned it a little bit in this video, like kind of keep playing around with the customization, take this guy out in the back, just see what that does. I would like to try and get zip fit liner in there just to see what that does. Ski in the park a little bit more. I think all I've really done on it is like slide some rails, which actually felt great.
yeah,
2.5 degree ramp
you
angle.
probably didn't feel the rail at all. You probably just felt like part of the boot.
You know, in hindsight, you're right. I didn't think about it at the time, but you're kind of right.
You're separated by a lot of plastic.
Yeah. I didn't really do much like park jumping on them because I was trying to take care of my knee towards the end of the season, get ready for golf season. Can't just be sending it all the time. So that's it. That's all I got. Let us know if you have any Cortex questions, whether it's for me or for Bob or for anybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.